Okay, from our studios in Los Angeles and Tampa, this is Green Tagged Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip, and I'm joined, as always, by my delightful co-host, Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. On Green Tagged, we'll look at the week's top news and explain why it matters to theme park professionals. This week, we're going to be talking about the news that just dropped about potentially the new Universal Park in the Middle East. And then we're going to get to listener questions, as this is the last episode of the year. And just in time, I finally have my Christmas decorations up. So,
yeah, you put your Christmas decorations up, the day before Christmas?
Well, I mean, that's when you're supposed to do it, right?
Like, what are you, living in the Edwardian era? What is this?
You trim the tree together. It's an activity.
So did you trim the tree with everybody who you celebrated with?
Of course. And I have my weird theme park ornaments. Yeah. Well, we wanted to thank everyone who commented in last week's episode as well, especially the comments that add context to what I left out, because usually it's me leaving stuff out. So I think that's really important to get those details in there whenever we miss anything. And I love reading through them and seeing more details and information that I didn't know about some items. So I think it's excellent, and we hope that you all will continue to do that and correct me when I get information wrong or leave stuff out. Not necessarily wrong. But.
Well, and I think it's important to recognize, too, that, and because Philip and I were just having this discussion before we started the show today, that we are doing this show so that it prompts conversation. And if we continue to build this online community where you guys can chat with each other and share your knowledge, your expertise, your experience, where we just have kind of tip the first domino and you guys can continue to fall and make it a greater, more impactful experience, that makes us feel really good, because that's kind of the purpose. That's kind of the point of the show. We're not here to give you in 30 minutes every single minute detail about every single thing that's happening in the industry. That's first of all, a really dull show. And secondly, we couldn't maintain that. And by we, I mean Philip, because he does all the research. So it's one of those situations where I just want to echo what Philip was saying. We really appreciate the fact that you're building a community, you're building an online community that we just kind of help steer and point in the right direction. So, I love hearing all the. He's even got me starting to read them, and I never read stuff online. I'm
funny.
Horrible.
I know,
but
I couldn't believe it.
But it's really fun, because you guys are taking and sharing your expertise, your knowledge, your experience on the topics that we've sort of put the framework out there for. So we'll continue to try to give you these canvases, and you just continue to paint like crazy, because it makes us all better. It makes it a much richer experience for all of us. And it builds that online community where we can actually help one another.
Yep. Well, I think the perfect way to kind of end this year, aside from listener questions, of course, because that's a great way to get some feedback, but it's also news about a new theme park, or potentially news. And this was a pretty massive story that actually the Wall Street Journal broke exclusively. And it seems like they have some sources that they were able to corroborate this with. So I'll read here from the article, which is from the Wall Street Journal. It says, the Wall Street Journal reported that Universal Destinations and Experiences has begun early planning for a theme park in Saudi Arabia, with potential funding from a government-backed entity through a licensing deal. Six Flags Qiddiya will open, of course, on December 31st, and the Dragon Ball Z Park and Water Park are under construction in the city. Of course, this comes after Disney has announced a similar deal to build a new theme park in Abu Dhabi. And of course, Universal just opened the Epic Universe this year. And 2026, they're going to be opening Universal Kids Resort. And they have announced the first theme park in the UK, the Universal's first theme park in the UK. So here, I'm quoting directly from the article here. It said that Disney said its Abu Dhabi theme park would be accretive to earnings from the day it opens, unlike parks it's built itself that typically take a while to turn a profit. Universal previously tried to make a move into the Middle East in 2008 when it broke ground with a partner on Universal Studios Dubai Land, but little more than a grand entrance arch was built before financing fell apart due to the global financial crisis. The project was eventually canceled. So the author isn't drawing the direct line in there between the two, but I think what they're trying to say is that if it's a licensing deal, which is what they're saying it is, then it would operate in the same way that the Disney plan is, which we talked about that extensively when that news was announced. And it seems like when we talked about then is that it's win-win, because if they're just licensing it, they don't have to put their own money into it and they still get the presence in the area. Mm-hmm. And as we have talked about a lot on the show and has been backed by a lot of the research from the global index report that the TEA puts out, that the Middle East is really the place where a lot of the new construction is happening, and a lot of the funding is in the industry is going on right now. It's like, we said previously too, if you want a job, that's a place to go because there's so much that's going on there. So to me, I'm not. My little we always have conspiracy theories about this, but I kind of think that this is one where I'm not sure if it wasn't leaked on purpose, because to me, I think the thing that I was thinking as soon as Disney announced, we have all these dominoes creating this competitive atmosphere there. And to me, the biggest thing that was missing was Universal. And it was almost becoming a liability in my mind. Like, what is Universal doing about the Middle East? Because they don't have a big presence there that's up like this, like a park, and they just opened Epic and like all this stuff. So I almost would say this could have been planned as a way to drum up, because the whole story is literally just that there's talks about this thing happening, and if it happened, it would be a licensing thing. So there's not really anything, but I think it's just enough to keep it out there where it's like Universal isn't rolling over in this market. Like Universal is trying to make this market work. And if they did it in the same way as Disney with the licensing, it would be, the shareholders would be very happy because it's not going to take any money. It's just going to be a licensing. So they'll just make money again from day one. They'll have money and they'll have access to that audience. So, are there any downsides? I don't know. I mean, because Disney got a lot of blowback.
This is the kind of thing that it's a perfect example of when the government says, especially a government that is so centralized and has such very deep pockets, when they decide, here's what we're going to do by 2030, because that's the Project 2030 is the Saudi deadline basically for for creating their huge guest engagement, their huge foray into attractions, their huge foray into becoming the destination point in that part of the world. And so when they have the opportunity to have discussions with Universal, of course they're going to have them. They're going to do it the same way all of the UAE, all of Yas Island in Abu Dhabi was done. Everybody thinks that the SeaWorld park is SeaWorld. We've talked about it many, many times. It's not. It's owned by Moral. It's licensed through SeaWorld. It is sort of a joint venture, I would say. But the same is true with Ferrari World. The same is true with Warner Brothers World. And the same will be true with Disney. In Saudi, the same is true with Six Flags. The same is true with Aquarabia. The same is true with Dragon Ball Z. And I'm guessing the same, obviously the same will be true here with Universal. So it is a very different way of doing things, although Disney's been doing it for years, quite honestly. There are Disney parks around the world that are not truly Disney parks. They're run to Disney standards, but in essence, they are a franchise or a lease deal. I'm oversimplifying, I realize. But so this does not surprise me in the least. What surprises me is honestly that it's taken this long for this information to come out. Because Philip and I had the opportunity to walk the Six Flags park when it was under construction in Qiddiya earlier this year, at some point in time. This year.
In March, right? Or February?
Sounds good to me. But unfortunately, we weren't able to take any photos or take any video because obviously it was still a working construction site. And the fact that it is scheduled to open this week, the week that this will air, that's huge. And the main reason I say that's huge is having looked at it earlier this year, both Philip and I thought, this is going to open when? And now it's ready to go. And if you want to see what it's all about, go ahead and check out there's video everywhere of the new coaster. There's video it's like 5 world record holder coasters. There's and what's interesting is, it's all happening at night because they won't open until at least 4 p.m. is what they told us. So it's a different way of looking at theme park. And I think that's the true takeaway as theme parks expand into the Middle East. It's not going to be the same way we think of theme parks here because the culture is different. And, I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's just different. And so there's going to be The parks are going to have much more of a focus on how do they look when they're lit at night, because that's when the most guests are going to see how the parks operate, is in darkness. So lighting will become significantly more important. As far as a business move, I think this makes just total sense. I think Disney being in Abu Dhabi is another reason that Universal was sparked to either leak or announce the possibility of a park in Saudi, because they didn't want to show that they hadn't stepped up to the party, as Philip was saying. They need to make sure that they're part of the game. And this announcement shows that, they're not completely oblivious to the fact that this is where the attractions industry is exploding at the moment.
Yep.
So
it's interesting when you talk about how it's going to be different there. I didn't really think about that, but it's very true. I mean, you think about Tokyo Disneyland, right, being one of the most famous, I think, examples of a licensing deal, but where they built it to a higher standard, even I think than I think that's going to be, because it's going to be just a different theme park experience to be there in the Middle East, not just because of the culture, but like they will make it different because when we've said this, I mean the Six Flags Qiddiya is the best Six Flags park, and the same is true with the SeaWorld. I think it's like it's just that weird thing, where the US, we start the theme parks. We didn't start theme parks, but our theme parks were built a while ago, is the way to put it. And so some of the infrastructure is, like, it depends, right? On like Disney is pretty good at upkeep and reimagining things, but that's not true with everybody. So, but our theme parks have been around for longer, right? And then you have these places which are building everything right now. And so it's kind of like they're building their first theme parks now when the theme park industry has already evolved to a specific point. Mm-hmm. So their baseline is going to be a lot different than our baseline here. And I think that's something I think people don't really think about, because, I mean, it's just going to be a whole different experience, because, imagine if, I guess it's just like when Orlando and everything is built roughly around the same time. Mm-hmm. Imagine that. And remember, Magic Kingdom only opened with a few. I mean, it wasn't what it was now. I mean, and that's
Disney World opened only with Magic Kingdom and 2 hotels.
Yep.
When they opened, there were 2 hotels and the Magic Kingdom, and that was it. So,
and I think by those standards, they're doing better, right?
Well, and imagine, the baseline was what, 70, mid 70s when Walt Disney World opened. So just imagine that was the baseline then. Yep. They've learned from, all those years of experience, and have been watching carefully and studying carefully, and investing appropriately, putting money where they need to. And they're not putting themselves in a position where the parks, where the parks have to turn a profit instantly, even though the article says that the Disney park will be set up to do that, which I think they're right.
For Disney, it will, because Disney, it's a licensing deal. They're not money.
Well, Disney's making money off of it now. That licensing deal has already started. They're making money. Disney is making money off of it now, and the park's not even open yet. Yep. So, but I think that the intent to build to play a longer game is something that is also unique. So they've got 2 things working in their favor. Number one, they have a baseline that is significantly higher based on the successes and failures that have happened in other places around the world. So they kind of know what they can and cannot do. I think Dubai was another great testing ground. I think that we learned from Motion Gate, you can't operate an outdoor park during the day.
Yep.
So what have they done in Abu Dhabi? All of the parks are indoors or will only operate at night.
Yep.
Or they're water parks.
Yep. Well, I don't think to me, I mean, I was trying to think about if there are any downsides. The only downside I could think about is that when Disney made the announcement, they got a lot of blowback for the cultural, elements, which are in the article as well. The Wall Street Journal article mentions that. And I just think, I know this blowback's going to happen again, but to me, being in the industry and watching where this goes, It to me, I've decided. I mean, it is. I can even say for our business, for Gantum, for my business, it's you have to be in this market. You don't have a choice. And so I think it's a little bit different for those of us that are professionals in the industry. Like you have to be in the market. I mean, I guess you don't have to work if you're a contractor. You don't have to take jobs there. But if you're a manufacturer or supplier like we are, you have to be in. You have to be there, and that's why IAPA is going there, and that's why you see so much movement there because you have to. I mean, a lot of the attractions people kind of flow where the building is. You know, they move. So Asia had its moment, right, when Tokyo and they were being built, and then you had Osaka, Universal Beijing. I mean, we move around. You know, where the work is, and this is where the work is, and so you have to be there. So
and I'm sure that there is somebody who is listening to this or watching us on YouTube has already put in a comment. Yes, but it's a horrible place. They treat people horribly. I know that comment's already there. And so I want you to think about it this way. If you feel that is still true, and I'm only basing it on my experience in the 2 times I've been to Saudi. 2 times I've been to Saudi. The culture, I did not find the culture nearly as oppressive or as terrifying as people want to make it out to be. I may be looking at it through rose-colored glasses, and I may have been put in a position where I wasn't going to see any of that supposed trauma or negativity. But I also want you to think that if they are trying to be a worldwide destination, then opening attractions like this could conceivably change the views of their country and change the ways the country changes the culture of the country, because they need to make certain that everyone is feeling welcome. Now, I can say without hesitation, because I was in UAE longer, in the UAE, they stand by it. They hold Emirati to a very high standard. They hold people who are of Islamic faith to a very high standard. Those rules have not changed. However, they do have a much more live and let live response to those people who are not Emirati and who are not of the Islamic faith, which is why every hotel has a bar, which is against the law everywhere else. But they recognize not the whole world doesn't operate the same way we do. And if we want to encourage them to come and visit us, we need to make space. We need to make room for those people who have different views from ourselves. So it is possible that this announcement, this Universal announcement, and the Disney announcement, and every other announcement that has been made, the Warner Brothers expansion that nobody remembers of the Harry Potter world, which is under construction right now.
I know, which is, it's just funny.
It's going to be gigantic.
That was not mentioned in any of these articles, and I was like,
Yeah, they've kind of forgotten about it. They'll forget about it until it opens. But all of these things may actually, instead of forcing people to visit a quote-unquote impressive country, it may actually cause the country to make space for people who view things differently, and it may actually adjust the culture as well. Because again, these are business people. They're smart business people.
That's right.
And they want to make certain that these things work. So if you don't want to go to the Middle East, don't go to the Middle East. I'm fine with that. If you don't want to go, wherever you don't want to go, you do you. All I'm saying is make sure you've done your research. Make sure that you're not just believing the first thing you read. Talk to people who've lived there. I know several people to kind of tag onto what Philip was saying about we go where the work is, we go where the construction is. I know many people from the U.S. who still maintain their U.S. citizenship who are living in either Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Riyadh, and they have chosen to live there permanently because as one guy says, I can't live this well back in the United States. I am paid well for what I do. There's always work. He's a freelancer. There's always work for me. He lives in a high rise that looks out over the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. So, you just have to kind of look at the people who've actually done it. Ask them. Because if you're in this industry, I can promise you will know people who have done work in the Middle East. So ask them if you have any questions. Because I just think that this is going to be a hub, at least for the next, I would say, 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yep. Okay. We got to move on to listener questions.
Okay.
we got like 10 minutes left. Okay. So these are listener questions we've collected from the episodes. There's only 4 of them,
Okay.
but that doesn't get very long for us. Okay, so the first one is actually from our Patreon, from Dennis, who says, "What do you think the impact will be to the European parks of the new Universal Park in Europe?" We talked about this on the episode when we talked about the Universal UK coming out. Scott, what do you think?
I think that considering that we'll have a new Universal Park, a Puy de Fou Park, the current, Alton Towers, all of those, I think it's only going to be good for the industry. I think it's going to make it more of a destination for people who are theme park goers. I think that, I think I told this story during the episode where we announced this. When I was working at Busch Gardens, when Animal Kingdom opened, and that's an hour and 15 minutes away. We were terrified that a park with animals and roller coasters was opening within a drive distance of us. And it was one of the best years to date. Things have changed since then, but to date, it was one of the best attendance years Busch Gardens had, because people were coming from around the world who had an interest in animals and roller coasters. And while they were here, they decided, oh, well, we'll come for Animal Kingdom, but hey, there's this Busch Gardens thing. This sounds cool too. Let's go check that out. So it actually ended up drawing more tourism to the area, to the Central Florida area, and was beneficial for us. So I think, at least in the short term, it's going to be really, really strong. Now, is it going to cannibalize the existing parks? Not initially, I don't think. And we'll have to. That I'm going to hold my final answer for a while, because I really don't know enough about how these are going to impact things like basic travel and infrastructure for the cities, how difficult it's going to be to get to these places. But if it's based on previous experience, I think it's going to be great for tourism in the area, and I don't think it's going to shut out the existing parks. In fact, I think it's going to help them, at least in the short term.
Yep. I agree with all that. I think we saw the same thing with Epic, is what I would add to, where you saw, Disney saw a pretty big boost. Even SeaWorld Orlando saw a boost in numbers. So I think that in the short term, it's going to lead to, because again, people, instead of going somewhere else, people are going to stay there to go, and they'll come from around the area in a shorter, trip to come to that. And while they're in the area, they can do other things. The question is going to be, how quickly are they going to adjust to offer? They're not going to be able to compete on the same metrics. So again, it's how are you find that point of differentiation. So it's going to be up to how quickly they will find that point of differentiation when the dust settles, and make a value proposition by being like, if you come to this park, you can also come to ours because we offer something different. So
right, yeah. Don't try to compete head to head. Don't try to be Universal. Don't try to be Puy de Fou. And I keep using Alton Towers because it's just the first one that comes to mind. But be who you are. Play into that history, because let's face it, coaster nerds. There are certain coaster nerds that want to see those parks that have been around, that they've only dreamt of, and they may have an excuse now because Universal is going to be there, but they're still going to visit those parks.
Yeah. So this next question comes from Alexander Sims 1613. They say, hypothetically, let's say you worked for a company who did architectural work for the big 2, but you do everything except the massive CapEx projects. Obviously very hypothetical. If you wanted to get into the mid-tier parks like Herschend, Cedar, Six Flags, or international parks, so you could have more say in the creative, how would you go about approaching them, especially without your large portfolio of work?
Well, if you are, let me go back to the hypothetical situation here. If you are doing architectural work for the big 2, you have a portfolio of work. Let's start there. You have a portfolio of work. It may be more of
CapEx, but there's work there. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're working in an architectural firm, you have a portfolio. I will say that everybody wants to do creative, because everyone thinks that creative is the cool job.
Oh, it's so much competition. Yeah.
There's so much competition, and that's, I deal with it. I battle this every single day of my career, which is why I have no problem working in the smaller and more mid-range arenas, because that way I get to do what I love. So I guess my point is, if you're looking to get into the Herschend, Cedar doesn't exist anymore. If you're looking to get into Herschend, Six Flags, that kind of thing, contact them and say, next time you do an RFP, include me. See if you can get your name on their request for proposal or request for quote, so that you can put in a bid. Because you may think, well, I haven't built a major attraction. All I've built is 3 restaurants and a bathroom and a gift shop. Okay, then use that to your advantage. Use that to show what you can do, and get your foot in the door.
Would you suggest that they like quit their day job, or because I'm sure that there's some sort of like, well, I don't know if they have that in their contract or not, but I mean,
this is all hypothetical anyway. So
yes, that's right. It's all hypothetical. But hypothetically speaking, if a person had a job, a day job, would you try and do something with the day job first? Like, would you go to your management and make like ask for some sort of a career plan, or would you quit and then go try and find work like in the Middle East, or try and find work for a different company or whatever? Or would you, while you're still employed at that said job, hypothetically, would you try and submit as a freelancer?
Well, hypothetically, if you're working at a job where you're working at them, there's probably a non-compete clause. So chances are hypothetically good that you wouldn't be able to do this without hypothetically quitting. So you can, and I would also venture to say that if indeed this were the case, where you've been working on some of the architect, because I mean, it says massive CapEx projects. If you're working in architecture, you're working in the world of CapEx.
Yeah.
Already.
Just not massive CapEx.
Just not massive CapEx. And you're not working on the sexy projects. And what I'm hearing is I'm building gift shops. I want to be building attractions. That's what I'm hearing. So if that is the case, use your expertise. Take what you do really well, and lead with that. Say, here's examples of me being on time, on budget. Here's the challenges that we overcame. So I run, parallel paths, just in case something does happen, or when something does happen, so that I can keep us on time and on budget. Lead with your strengths. Lead with your strengths and get that foot in the door. There's never going to be a magic bullet. There's never going to be a magic bullet where, I can say, if you read this book, or if you do this, or if you contact this person, then you will get the next bid you put in. That does not happen. That simply does not happen. But I will say, surround yourself with like-minded people. Be in the room with the people where it happens. That's why things like, IAPA Expo are so flippin' important. And not just IAPA, but, TEA, other organizations that are within the industry, AZA, to make sure that you are making the connection so that they know who you are. They're not going to seek you out, especially if you're working for somebody else. The chances of a headhunter coming to you and saying, you are the master at building restaurants and we want you to build this roller coaster, they're not going to do it. So you've got to take the responsibility and, take the skill set that you have and lead with it. Don't panic. Just
Okay. Next question from Bill 05Q7G. With most big parks being mature and landlocked, and with new coasters being very expensive, do you foresee a greater trend of older coasters being renewed rather than the usual move of ripping out an older coaster for a new one? This could even include non-coaster attractions like Kings Island redoing their Boo Blasters attraction.
I have a very unpopular answer to this question. I don't think the future of theme park, I don't think the long-term future of theme parks is coasters. I think it is unique attractions. I think we have pushed coasters to the point where, unless it is surrounded by multimedia, unless it is part of a much bigger experience, I think the days of just coasters, I mean, we just reported on it. We just reported on the park that chose not to do the coaster and chose instead to do Bugs Bunny and Friends family experience. So I think it's important to recognize that you're right. They are landlocked. You're right. It's expensive to tear down a coaster, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But quite often, it's cheaper to tear it down and start from scratch than it is to redo a coaster. The only example that I know, and I can't share numbers, but I know that with when they put Iron Gwazi in at Busch Gardens in Tampa, originally the plan was to reutilize as much of the track as possible. And they claim that a lot of it was reused, but the percentage of reused material from the original coaster is so minimal, it's almost embarrassing. So I'm not sure that coasters are going to be the thing that people are going to. I think the pendulum is going to swing away from them. That is my prediction. I could be 100% wrong, but based on what I'm seeing, unless the coaster is a record breaker or tied to a specific IP in a way that no other coaster experiences that IP, and that doesn't mean just call it, sorry, I'm going to pick on my friends on Warner Brothers. Don't just call it Joker's Revenge and make it a purple coaster. No, it has to be intimately tied to the IP, or it utilizes some sort of technology that is not being utilized on any other coaster. I mean, let's be honest. Guardians of the Galaxy is a coaster, but that experience so surpasses any coaster that you'll see in any mid-range park because the focus is not on the coaster; it's on the whole experience.
The only thing I'm going to add to that is just that the research that we talked about a few episodes ago about travel trends, which I know a lot of people, were like, "Oh, this research is not blah, blah." But I'm like, look, it was still a good sample size for 1,000 people in that age range that are in the U.S. that go to entertainment. So it's still a poll that pay attention to. And this is exactly what they said. Also, is that it's like the days of kind of waiting, having your checklist, and spending so much time in line and kind of waiting for the marquee things is kind of over, because at least right now for them. And so I think it probably is a pendulum thing, though, as everything is. I'm sure, it'll swing back to people wanting to do the marquee things. But for now, it seems like it's more about vibes right now. And they're not really for the vibe of waiting so long for just single, like, it's like this is like not worth it. Right. It's like that thing of like, if you're waiting 2 or 3 hours for a thing that's a minute long, it's kind of the calculus is not there.
Well, and speaking of vibes, we hope that we have left you with enough good vibes for 2025, and that these good vibes continue for 2026. On behalf of, what?
So we did not finish all of our questions, Theme Park JJ. There's still one that we have, but we have talked about what you've asked before.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, maybe we can. Okay. I know it's.
Go ahead. Well, we've already gone over time. Go ahead.
Okay, let's just finish this one. Okay, so
you've already messed up my goodbye. So go ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay. Theme Park JJ, he says, you two always talk about creature comforts driving guest rates of return. I've noticed that the other side of the coin are the pain points that drive them away. I'm referring to little stuff like the $4 mandatory Gwazi lockers. Speaking of Gwazi, reservations at Disney, unannounced buyouts like Red Coconut. How do parks convince operations to remove those small hurdles for the greater good? Have you seen any easy fixes that could massively improve guest scores? We do talk about those quite a lot. Scott has a whole rant about the reservations at Disney.
I haven't gone. Thing. I won't go till they're gone. There's my rant.
I don't know. This is a great question for Scott, who's been in those roles before, who's kind of straddled the two worlds of having to talk to. I think it's not usually operations, though. This is usually something that comes from a higher, a different management position.
Well, all of these examples are actually revenue driven. So, so what you have to do is you have to look at is there a way to shift where this revenue comes from? And I will give you a perfect example. Parking. This is a big issue. This just came up with another major player in the industry. Parking prices going up.
Yep.
I'm a firm believer that you should take 1/4 of whatever it is that you want in parking and add it to a ticket price and create free parking for your guests. Yes, it's hidden, but you're still generating that revenue. And will people say, "Oh my God, well, the prices of theme park tickets are already so high, I can't afford it, blah, blah, blah. What if I'm not parking, blah, 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 blah." Okay, but it's either you have to spend $40, I'm using simple math here, you either have to spend $40 to park your car, or you add $10 to every ticket for the 4 people in your car and give free parking. These revenue generators are going to be there. They need to be there. The $4 mandatory Gwazi locker, mandatory. It's not mandatory if you have a purse holder, but not everybody does. So what I would suggest again is incorporate that revenue somewhere else, so it's not the pinch point that drives you away. This is what I talk about when I talk about the concerns that I have of departments operating individually from one another and not operating together as a park. This is a situation, it sounds to me, and I'm not there, but it sounds to me like this is a situation where the merchandise team, who is the one who handles the locker revenue, says we need to up our revenue because we're not selling enough t-shirts. So we're going to make it a mandatory $4 locker that you have to do in Gwazi, which I think is the wrong approach, personally. I would take that money and hide it elsewhere so that it doesn't become that point of pain. And it doesn't, yes, they're still making the money. They're still taking it out of our pockets. I understand all of that, but it's still a business, so that the revenue still has to be generated. When you talk about buyouts, this has been a point of contention with me and pretty much every one of my clients ever, because every one of my clients will have a beautiful facility that could be utilized every single night for a Christmas event or a Halloween event or a summer event or whatever, but they hold off and they say, no, you can't use that just in case, this is my favorite phrase, just in case we might sell it for a party. And so the only way around that I've found internally is to actually run the numbers and say, okay, over the last 5 years during this month, how much revenue has this space generated? And you take that and you do an average for that month. And then you go back and say, okay, is it worth that to use this to create a Santa Claus experience, for example, that is going to generate X amount of dollars in photo sales and additional associated merchandise sales and front of line access sales. So all of these pain points that you mentioned, and I'm so glad you mentioned it. I'm so glad, Philip, that you actually made it so we answered this, because you knew I was going to rant about it. These unfortunately, these dollars have to be there somewhere. Yeah. But I think there are smarter ways to put them in so that they don't appear as pain points and it doesn't feel as though people are being nickeled and dimed. But it is finding a balance. You have to figure out what is that balance between feeling nickel and dimed and creating those little tiny, death by 1,000 pinpricks, or is it the sticker shock you get when the ticket price goes up by $10? So I think that intelligent parks will find ways to slip this money into different spaces, but the best way to do it is to stop operating as a bunch of departments occupying the same space and start operating as a theme park that is looking at the guest experience first.
Okay, that's it. Bye.
Okay, Happy New Year, everybody. Have a great year, and we will see you in 2026.